So when you look at the pick of Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey, that's linebacker, interior offensive line / center. He can play both positions. I assume he'll be the center. What position group do you think is next, Jordan?
Man, I don't know. I think they're going to have options wherever they go. Um, you got to think wide receiver or edge. Like
Mm-hmm.
tight end is still a tier 3 need. Cornerback and safety are options, but wide receiver, especially the way the board is falling. I mean, there's a ton of wide receiving talent. Amon St. Brown, Tylan Wallace, Frank Darby, Sage Surratt, Seth Williams, Simi Fajogo, Tamorian Terry, like the list goes on and on. There are going to be plenty of choices for the Chiefs. So I don't necessarily know what their first pick on day 3 is going to be. That'll probably depend on the board and it'll dictate their best player available strategy. But there's definitely options. I mean, there's depth at pretty much every position. They probably won't take another linebacker. Interior defensive line is another tier 2, tier 3 need. So they're going to have definitely a multitude of options to go with.
They really will. And we saw a little run on cornerbacks there, a little bit of Fitu Melifonwu call it kind of fell a little bit further than we thought he was going to. Same thing with Elijah Molden, some pretty quality guys going at the end of round 3, really,
The
almost the end of
dudes.
the night. Yeah, there are some dudes there for sure. So would you be shocked to see the Chiefs go kind of secondary there with kind of how the board has fell? Maybe a Jacoby Stevens, something like that?
Yeah, that's an option. I mean, there's guys like Talanoa Hufanga, Tyree Gillespie, Tariq Thompson, James Wiggins. So safety is definitely deep. And then looking at the quarterback spot, Shakur Brown, Trill Williams, Bryce Thompson, Israel Mukuamu. I wrote him down. He hasn't been drafted yet that I can remember. And
I don't
that's
think
really
so.
weird because he is a dude for sure. Rashad Wildgoose, Robert Rochelle. So there's depth, there's variety. Slot guys like Wild Goose, or guys who can play on the outside like in Trill Williams, or a guy who is kind of a tweener like Trill Williams, where you're not entirely sure if he can play safety or cornerback. So I wouldn't be surprised at this point with many things. Like running back,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be surprised. Quarterback, I'd be surprised. And then linebacker. And then I think interior offensive line, like they can still take a guard, I think, because that's something
No.
you're going to need eventually. Tackle, slowly kind of chipping away at things that the Chiefs may need or may not need. And the tight end board just isn't great anymore. Once Tommy
Mm-hmm.
Tremble kind of comes off the board, Brevin Jordan's still there, but I just don't know what his fit would be with the Chiefs. I feel like his talents would be better used somewhere else. So wide out, edge, and then I guess secondary would be my top 3 kind of pinpoint positions.
Yeah, I would say that wideout and edge kind of coming into the draft, we thought were kind of the two biggest needs for the Chiefs, and they haven't addressed them. I think I made a tweet when I made a tweet saying like, "Hey guys, send in your picks. Who do you think the Chiefs are going to take?" And I said I want them to take a wide receiver and an edge, but I went with two other completely opposite positions because I knew that they probably weren't going to take a wide receiver and edge because that's what I wanted them to take. That's just usually how it seems like it goes. And we talked about kind of how the wide receiver board had fallen for the Chiefs at 58 and 63. I still think the wide receiver board is just fine. As you mentioned, there's a lot of guys on there that could still make immediate impact. What do you think about edge rusher? I think edge rusher might be one of those that okay, it might be time to start looking at it. 144, I could see a guy like Ellerson Smith being there, Adio Gandiji, a guy to get in there and become a rotational guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Even Jordan Smith, Dalen Hayes,
Yeah.
both of the guys from Florida State, Robinson and Kando, are both there. Rashad Weaver from Pitt is still there, and a lot of people thought that Weaver might go before Jones. So he's a guy that's going to be available. Like, you're not going to get a future stud, probably. I'd
Mm-hmm.
say Ellerson Smith is probably the only one that I can think of where you can realistically put time in and develop him and expect him to become a really good player, or have that remote chance. Like the rest of those guys kind of are what they are. And there's value in that. Some of them are third down pass rushers that can come inside. Some of them will set the edge, like a Weaver who specializes in a little bit of everything but doesn't have a go-to elite trait. And there's value in all of that. Day one, you want guys that have the explosive athleticism, they have the athletic profile, they have the measurables. Day two, you kind of get less of everything, but still a chance at hitting a gym. then day 3, kind of the rest of the crop. So if the Chiefs don't act early on day 3, they're really going to have their work cut out for them in terms of not only fit, but also long-term projection. So that's definitely a position they're going to have to probably hammer home pretty early on day 3.
So are you worried about how the board has fallen for the Chiefs kind of in day three here? Or do you think that there's still plenty of guys on the board that can make contributions not only, for the long term, but even for the short term?
Yeah, I think there's plenty. I mean, interior defensive line is one that is a long-term pick. Whoever they take along the interior defensive line, if they take somebody,
Yep.
probably won't see many snaps this year, if at all. I mean, like if they take a Kairos Tonga or Tadaro Slayton, Bobby Brown, guys like that who could replace Derek Nutty. And we have to look at this through a broader lens and bigger picture, like the
Hmm.
Nick Bolton pick. The Chiefs aren't going to have a huge role in store for Nick Bolton year one, but they can save money by getting rid of Anthony Hitchens. Nick Bolton will be ready. You don't have to sign a free agent. He'll have a year in that system. The same thing could happen with Derek Nottie. Like, I'm not
Hmm.
saying it will. I'm not saying the Chiefs won't pay him. But if they take a Kairos Tonga, they let him take over as a 2-down guy. They don't pay Nottie his 6 to 8 million a year, whatever he wants as a 2-down nose tackle. They're saving money. And the Chiefs are a team where they're going to have a top heavy roster. They're going to be paying guys a lot of money at the top. They need depth. They need
Hmm.
guys who can be drafted, not play major roles immediately, take over later. Like I was telling, I forget who it was or if I tweeted it or whatever, but the draft that could be the best for the Chiefs, this was pre-draft obviously, could be the one where you look and you're like, there's not a bunch of day one impact there. Those
Yeah.
drafts for the Chiefs at this point, the long-term projection means more than what they're going to offer now. The Chiefs have the right now players, they have the core, they have the veterans, they have the leadership, they have the coaching, they have the GM, all of that stuff. They don't necessarily have that long-term, this guy factors into the 2023 rotation, this guy factors into the 2024 one, stuff like that. So if they can nail these day 3 picks, at least a couple of them, we talked before the podcast, Brett Beach can hit home on a UDFA or two.
Hmm.
It's weird to count on that, but Beach is probably as good, if not better, than anybody at that. So the Chiefs have their work cut out for them for sure, but they do have some picks. I'm looking at that 175, 181, essentially back to back with how quick that
Yeah.
process is going to be, where they can kind of get a couple guys they like.
I think so too. I think that that's kind of a good little sweet spot there. I do like the talent that's still there. Like as you mentioned, there's guys we've talked about for a while with Ellerson Smith, with Tamorion Terry, guys that have immense talent, but that will take a little bit. And people have to realize this when we talk about day three picks. Day three picks are going to take a little bit. I know L'Jarius Sneed was a fourth round pick. He was a day three pick. So that's so uncommon for a team to have a L'Jarius need to come in and
Oh, yeah.
impact player right away. So we got to be patient with these guys. Don't expect too much out of them right off the gate, and it'll add some good depth. I think tackle is one of the positions that wouldn't shock me if they drafted me either. They need some depth at tackle. They'll have Mike Rimmers, but only Mike Rimmers for a year, so they're going to need a guy to come on and be a depth piece in terms of it in case somebody gets injured. Maybe Stone Forsyth is a guy that we see come in for a long term type thing. And then you start thinking, oh, what do they really care about? Lucas Niang. And there's a bunch of that goes about that too. That you can go down a rabbit hole talking about that. So, but Jordan, before I let you go, I want to talk about some scenarios that can happen with the Chiefs picks here. 144 is their first pick. It's still got a while before the Chiefs are on the clock. I believe we're at what, pick 104. So it's 40
Mm-hmm.
selections until the Chiefs have a pick. Do you see them trading up to get somebody? Maybe so Amundra St. Brown is still on the board. You see them maybe trading up for him or Tylan Wallace or somebody, or you see them trading back, trying to collect more picks in the later rounds.
I could see them doing the first one. I don't think a trade back is on the table, and
Mm-hmm.
it was weird because Brett Veach mentioned he fielded calls for trade backs.
Yeah.
And who knows what he's done in the past? I'm sure he did the same thing, but that's just not really his MO. That guy just clearly, if he likes the board, he's going to just sit and wait, maybe even move up in
Mm-hmm.
his case. But at this point, man, I was looking at the Jimmy Johnson chart earlier on
Yeah.
Thursday evening, or I guess Friday evening on day 2. I don't know what the Chiefs can do in terms of packaging maybe 144 and 175. I would assume that would get them all the way up to essentially the beginning of that round or
Hmm.
close to it. I mean, the disparity between those picks just isn't great. Or you can go next year's 7th round pick, see if you can get up a few spots, stuff like that. So if an Amon St. Brown is close, like 130, and the Chiefs are saying, I don't know if he's going to last 14 picks, let's make a move, I could absolutely see them doing something like that, especially for a talent. I have a 2nd round grade on him. A lot of places have 2nd, 3rd round grades on him. He is a very good player. Tylan Wallace is the same way. The Chiefs are going to have the ability to do that. They have the aggressive general manager who can do that. They have the team fit. They have the long-term need. They have the short-term needs. So I could absolutely see it. But I think wide receiver would be the one spot where I think it's most likely to happen.